nice to be here with you today. My name is Maria Nilsson and I work at the unit of epidemiology and global health at the university. And as Joachim said, I'm interested in policy. I do different types of research, but I think policy is extremely important and relevant when it comes to work in climate change and health. And I will talk to you today about a few perspectives. Time is short, but I'll lift a few perspectives I think is important. There is now widespread agreement that we have a climate change, and it's impacted by energy use, population growth, and many other things. And this will lead to continuing and more severe climate change. And as Joachim said, it will affect health and the possibility to maintain health in many ways. For example, clean water, clean air, good food, adequate shelter, and of course the infectious diseases and the changes that Joachim spoke about. And this slide illustrates the way that greenhouse gas emissions, health impacts, and climate change change policies are linked together in a cascade of causes and effects. And research evidence today on how health is impacted should really be part of the debates, be part of the policy decisions on mitigation and adaptation. Why policy then? Why should we work with it? Well, in this kind of issue, the impacts are large. They are diverse, global. They are inequitably distributed in the sense that the countries, the more wealthy countries, who actually is behind lots of the problems, will not have to pay for, as it seems now, for the poorer countries' development. I mean, this is a really difficult thing in the global policy development. How will we make sure that the poorer countries have the right to their development in a climate-friendly way? We need policies to emphasize good health and all people's right to good health. Actually, to create the balance. We also need to secure support and secure the right for all countries' green development. And the policies are also important to strengthen the development of activities at all levels. The public places health at the top or near the top when they talk about what's important in life. So health is an excellent motivator, and we do what we can also to feed this into the debates on all levels where we are active. So why is policy development so slow? Well, of course there are lots of reasons for this, because it's a very complex issue. But I'll talk about one thing, and that's the vested interests. Before the Copenhagen meeting in 2009, I had a comment in the Lancet discussing this. And then I took tobacco, global tobacco policy, as a starting point for the discussion. In the early 50s, as you can see here on the top, in the early 50s, oh, it's jumped a lot, sorry for that, I can see that now. Jesus. I'll try to guide you through this in the best way. In the early 50s, research showed that tobacco was harmful to people's health. And we had a couple of researchers, Dahl and Hill, that were active, and they said that tobacco smoking can actually cause disease. And they talked about heart disease and later lung disease. They were actually questioned quite a lot because there was a strong influence that the results were wrong. And of course the tobacco industry was very active in this. And they had to protect themselves, they had to actually stand up for themselves quite a lot in debates, and they were questioned a lot. But a few years ago, one of them actually was made a knight by the Queen in Britain, so they got payback finally. But they were questioned a lot. And then in 1964, we got a rather groundbreaking report from Surgeon General in US, talking also about the same thing and stating the problem and really addressing and showing the evidence real hard that tobacco smoking can cause heart disease, lung cancer, and different types of diseases. And then 20 years later, the public support really galvanized, because then there was a new report talking about the passive smoking. And then something started to happen, because then people understood that this is not only harmful for the smokers, it's also harmful for the people around them. And this 50-year-long delay between knowing about the cause and the effect came to cause 100 million of deaths from smoking. And of course we can't allow this delay in climate change. We have to move faster because of the issue we have to deal with. And I will now give a few examples about how the tobacco industry worked and the strategies they developed and how they have been used also in other fields than tobacco control. This looks a bit better. Happy to see that. Probably no industry has been better in creating doubt and uncertainty than the tobacco industry have. They started, as I said, in the 50s, and they created campaigns in many ways. The companies hired scientists, and the scientists had to create evidence that they could use. They were to question the link between tobacco use, heart disease, and other illness. And finally then, the passive smoking, the evidence between passive smoking and tobacco. And despite the overwhelming evidence that there was, they still succeeded, and this led up to all those millions of smokers that died a premature death. The industry was able to conduct campaigns where they successfully delayed regulations for decades. And they, as part of a strategic plan that was made up by a PR company called Hill & Knowlton, they got experts to say what to use and not to use, what messages they should come forward with. They, as I said, engaged those scientists for contract research, and they used this evidence in trials. They used this evidence also to communicate the messages they selected. In the 1960s, as part of the campaign, the Tobacco Institute started a newspaper, a paper that targeted researchers and scientists mainly. And they used Hill & Knowlton to help them decide what should be published or not. The Tobacco Institute started the paper, and the name was Tobacco and Health Research. The criteria for getting articles published there was that it actually questioned that tobacco smoking was harmful. And they also got advice from Hill & Knowlton that they should use titles, strong words in the titles, like controversy, like uncertainty, it could be unknowns, other factors, just to make sure that we don't know this. This is not a fact, this is uncertain. And the same message would then also be communicated to the public in a very structured way. Oh, sorry for this. Initially, Hill & Knowlton, who had offices. It started in 1927, and they have today offices, I think, in 90 offices in 52 countries, so the firm is still there. Their mission was to minimize the effects from this message sent out to the public that tobacco smoking was harmful. And they stressed three basic points. The cause and effect has not been established, as you see at the bottom there. The statistics do not give the full answers, and there is a need for much more research. And in historiographies, they also have their highest historians say that this was a time of responsible disagreement. But the tobacco industry is not alone. This kind of tobacco strategies were used in many different industries. They were used in industries who worked with lead, asbestosis, different chemicals, and so on. And they are still used today. We know lots about this because of all the information that we've gained through the trials in US when people sued the tobacco companies. And finally, they had to open their archives, and that is why we know so much about the strategies they used. And there is actually something that is called the tobacco strategies. But not only the strategies were the same, sometimes also the people. I will confine myself just to mention two of them, and that is Fred Singer and Fred Seitz. Those people were engaged for the tobacco industry in many years. Already in the 20s they started. One of them is alive today, the man at the right, and the man, at the left, and the man at the right, he died in 2008. But they were high-level people. They were active in many years to sow doubt that tobacco was harmful. Singer was, amongst other things, had a position as a chief scientist in the Reagan administration. And Fred Seitz was the chairman of the US National Academy of Science. So they were high-level scientists. After they had distinguished themselves as researchers, they started to distribute many, many millions to people who did research and that would like to question the tobacco that was harmful. They did this for many years, and then after the tobacco strategies had been used by them, we could see that they moved on to the climate field. So these two people, they work now as climate skeptics. The man at the left, Fred Singer, has been very active also during the last years as a climate skeptic. When we want to perform change, sometimes it's good to look back and learn from history. And I have amused myself by doing this, also when we talk about climate change. I wanted to understand, how do we actually make things happen? If we look into what happened when we had the opium trade, at first it had to be proven harmful. And it was difficult because it was questioned for a long time. The opium trade was actually transnational in the 19th century. And it was getting problematic, but it was nothing was happening before it was proven harmful. And then it became a political issue, and it was often in debates, and it was mainly as a question of free trade and trade balance. It was when it became an ethical issue, when people started to talk about, should we actually do this? I mean, we can see that people are falling sick, get their lives ruined. So when it became an ethical issue, something started to happen. And in 1917, actually, we got an international legislation about this, that we should prohibit opium trade. And we can also see the same pattern when we look into tobacco, that it actually happens when it becomes an ethical issue. And I think we are there when it comes to tobacco. We have certainly come past the phase where we can say it is harmful. It has also become a political issue. We got the WHO's Framework Convention on Tobacco Control in 2005. It entered into force. So it will actually also make sure that we will protect people from tobacco smoking through legislation. And this has been extra important in countries with weak legislation. And I would say that it is an ethical issue today. We can see that people starting to talk about that, is this right, that the tobacco that is produced in the world actually is mainly produced in low and middle income countries. Very often by poor farmers that get tied up by the industries. So we can see examples actually that is becoming more of an ethical issue as well. And I would like to see the same when it comes to climate change. Of course, it'll take time to say, oh, we know all about it, because we can't do that. There are really many uncertainties, as Joachim also talked about. But we can talk about it as a political issue, and we certainly can talk about it as an ethical issue. And I think that if we want things to happen, we need to talk about moral grounds and ethical issues when it comes to climate change. Sorry. I would see this as a roadmap for us in the research in the climate change field. On the top, you have the international, global instruments and organizations. Then, on the national level, we have the governments, the authorities, foundations, funds, NGOs, and networks. And then we have the regional and local level, where we have local governance system, NGOs, health system, unions, employers, and citizens. So we need to target what we do at the different levels, and we need to see where to be and where we need to be to make change. We also have to work with treaties, legislation, and then also control measures and report systems. We need to work on research, development, with methods, technologies, etc. And then programs for mitigation and adaptation. So we need to be at the different levels, and we need to have a broad set of themes to work with. And I will give you a few examples about this. I work on a Lancet Commission, as Joachim mentioned, and there was the first Lancet Commission in 2009, where the problem was stated. We said then that we know that climate change will have impacts on health, and there is a need to do something. This commission will be more solutions focused. So it'll discuss how can we actually work to reduce emissions, what is important to do, and also about adaptation a little bit, but it's focused on mitigation. It aimed to provide a roadmap for how to lever influence now when we run up to the the Paris meeting in end of November, beginning of December this year, when important decisions are to be made. The Copenhagen meeting was also such a meeting where important, according to UN's roadmap, there was decisions to be made. This meeting is also such. So it is currently under review. So of course I can't tell you about the content yet, but we'll come back about that. But it will include global recommendations. And we will also have a process, a plan for effective dissemination leading up to COP21 in Paris. So this is a policy piece on the global level. And I'm engaged in this. And this is a project in Indonesia, where I'm the PI, where we work on constructing a system, an early warning system for dengue. It's actually 2 projects, and a colleague of mine leads the first project, where it's about organizing in the community, about getting access to weather data and dengue data, so it's possible to actually make a model and test the model that it works. So when a warning is given, the population will have a few weeks to prepare for the increased transmission and protect themselves. The second project I lead is the one that works with the community. We work with the KEP study, have collected the data, and by this we will be informed about what to do, what channels to work through, what messengers will bring the information, what messages are important, so that actually will do something when the warning comes. And this is this is not done a lot. The first part, when you actually do the warning, when you collect the data and make the model, that is quite, that is a thing used, a method used. But fewer of the projects have actually worked with the community on how to reach out and how to make people do something. And this is a project that's about adaptation. It's both on local level, of course, in Indonesia, but we also work on international level here. I'm really sorry for those slides. First time it has happened. This is about a mitigation project where we work both on local, national and European level. It's performed in 4 countries, in 4 cities, in Germany, in France, in Norway and here in Sweden. And in Sweden we have decided that we will do the project in Umeå. And it's a household survey where we will go out to household and they will be worked through about 80 questions where we will connect and collect the data and actually make their carbon footprint for their household. We will then ask them to prioritize what they could do to reduce their footprint by half. And we have decided that we will go half till 2030. The EU targets till 2050 is about 85 to 90%, if I remember right. So we have decided to go half of that till 2030. And then they will get a guidance on how to do this, and then we'll come back 1 year after and see what happened, the barriers for change, what made it happen, how could they actually did succeed, if they did. If they did not, what was difficult. In each country we'll also have a policy advisory board guiding us, but also discussing this. We will have workshops with decision makers from local to national level also working in parallel with us. Yep.
May I ask one question, like your relationship to the policy makers? So do you like proactively produce these reports and do the research and then hope that, for example, European Commission or the Riksdag in Sweden, that they come to you and take it? Or do you do it like they give you the project and give you the money and you deliver the results to them?
It's something in between. It's from a research foundation, so it's not that they give us the money. We have applied for a project in competition, so we got the research money. But we think it's very important to have a dialogue with the decision making in a few steps during the project, just to get to keep them updated on results, but also listen to them what they say. Because we also want to make sure that we feed in our results into decision makers' agenda. So we have a few steps along the line till 2017 where we will have those kind of workshops with decision makers. So they are not connected to the project. They don't even know about the project yet. But we will arrange a few workshops just to keep a dialogue about this.
And then hope that they will listen.
Absolutely, absolutely. We never have any guarantee that they will listen. I mean, that's what happens when we do research and try to feed it into policy processes. We can work hard to make them listen and try to communicate it in such a way that it becomes interesting. So, okay, and why do I do this? I mean, why do I work with this? For me, it is, of course, very simple. And sometimes we say this and smile because it might be easy to say this, but I actually find in my age also that I think it's very important that I try to contribute in a very small way, but in the way possible, together with colleagues, to reduce the problem so we don't forward it to coming generations. I think that is a responsibility that we all have as researchers as well in this field. Yeah.
Building on my previous question, do you think that researchers, so you and your colleagues, should even themselves go more into politics? I mean, of course, it's hard to, like be researcher and then also back in the Riksdag, and just there, or even on the European level, there the big decisions are taken, which really change the world. We can't, you can, of course, like candidate here for Umeå Kommun, but you won't change the global effects. So how do you see that? Because, as I said, in the end, the policymakers, the population or the people vote them, and not the researchers. So, of course, they want, in the end, they want to be elected or re-elected, and so there might be a trade-off in interest and the conflict. So
Absolutely.
how do you see this need of yourself being more proactively active in politics?
No. Well, I think I have to choose if I'm a researcher or if I'm a politician. But as a researcher, I think being in such a field that I am in global health, which is, the determinants for health are quite often about politics. So of course I, as a researcher, have to know what I deal with and communicate the results we have from our research in a way to decision makers, but also to the public. But I would find it way to be on the two sides at the same time. And I don't think I should be. But I like to really be strong and clear about our results and feed them in where they should be in the processes, where they could actually be meaningful. Yeah.
In your studies of this 80, it was 80 people in Umeå, was it?
No, I haven't said any number.
You didn't say
No. No.
the number.
The households.
Yeah.
Mm.
But anyway, it's stuff. Are you also planning to use some interventions to get them into some direction also?
No, not really. We have an instrument. We have an instrument of 60 to 80 questions that we will go through quite detailed, and after that, we ask for their priorities if they want to reduce the carbon footprint. So that is maybe what you could call a kind of an intervention, because it makes people think, of course, and reflect.
But if they say yes, they want to make a change.
Yeah.
Will you
But
guide
when
them-
we no.
will you guide them through that?
No, we won't. We will come back later and see what happened. And
Because I think that's the most important thing.
yeah,
That's what we as standing now, not doing it.
yeah,
We need to do something.
absolutely. I agree with you.
Digging,
Yeah, I do agree with you.
talking.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Absolutely. Yeah. Sorry? No. It's not a random. This you could call this as a kind of a qualitative study in a way. No. I actually the response from now is that people we have discussed with so far, and it's been piloted, is that they are very interested in getting their carbon footprint.
So you've got 80 very self-selected households
No, we haven't got 80 households. I don't know where that number came from. Yeah. Well, not on households anyway. No. Mm-hmm. And what is the problem with the study? This is kind of quality study. It's not like a natural science study in that way. We will actually, well, maybe you shouldn't take all the time about this, but I can, if you stay afterwards, I can tell you about the ideas for the study so far.